All right, with that, welcome everybody, and I turn the webinar over to Rochelle.
Thanks,
Oh,
Evan. Thank you. Yes, Rochelle Golub, that's me, and it's my honor to chair the Jewish Community Relations Council of Broward County. So good afternoon to everybody, although if it was yesterday, it might almost be still good morning. So I'm thrilled to present a panel on behalf of JCRC that is quite literally tied to the next generation of Jewish leaders and how they view the state of Israel. Sadly, as we recently saw where I live in East Fort Lauderdale, anti-Semitism is very real. On college campuses, however, this appears to be more in the form of an anti-Israel bias. Vilifying Israel and Zionism impacts large percentages of Jewish students for whom a connection with Israel is an integral component of their religious, social, and personal identities. And in a recent ADL study, one that we'll learn more about today from Lonnie, the Jewish students are reporting feeling compelled to hide aspects of their identities. So today we're going to hear from three speakers uniquely qualified to discuss anti-Israel bias, and they will do so from distinct and different perspectives. I will introduce them in a moment, but for some housekeeping issues, we encourage questions, and please pose them in the chat or the QA function at the bottom of your screen. And they will be expertly facilitated by the one and only Rabbi Arnie Samlin, who's already helping us put our correct names on the screen. Rabbi Samlin is Federation's Chief Jewish Education Officer, and questions will be fielded at the end of all of the presenters' remarks. So don't expect them to answer your questions immediately. First, we will hear from Lonnie Wilk. He's an interim regional director of the Anti-Defamation League's Florida region. He has a long and distinguished career with ADL and is on the front lines responding to hate crimes and discrimination in our region. Then we have Adam Collette. He's the executive director of Hillel, Broward, and Palm Beach County. Are you going to come to us live, Adam?
I am live, but there are these planes flying over from this very noisy Fort Lauderdale airport. So we'll go outside later.
The nerve. Well, our intention was for Adam to come to us live from Nova Southeastern University's Breezeway, where students are conducting a program they call Spread Cream Cheese, Not Hate. That's the best. So save us a bagel, Adam. And if he's too modest to say this, but he's one of the most beloved Jewish leaders in the Hillel system. And if you don't believe us, just ask the people that he mentors. And finally, we'll hear from a person who calls himself my partner in crime, and that's Evan Goldman. He's VP at Federation, and he's the lead professional on the Jewish Community Relations Council. His unique perspective comes from years as a lawyer and nonprofit leader working not only in Jewish Broward, but communities of colors as well. So with those remarks, I hope you enjoy the program. I know I will, and I turn it over to Lonnie Wilk.
Thank you, Rochelle. It's wonderful to be with you today. I'm originally from Plantation and went to Posnack. So thank you to not only the JCRC, but the Jewish Federation of Broward County for ensuring a vibrant and vital Jewish community in Broward County and beyond. And I am definitely a product and a recipient of that. So thank you to all of you. And thank you to Adam Collette, who you'll be hearing from in just a little while, from Hillel, and Jill Deutsch. Thank you for all you both do. And I'd also like to acknowledge my colleague, Eric Ross, who is with us today. Eric is the Director of Jewish Community Outreach for ADL's Southern Division. So I am going to share my screen and talk to you a little bit about what we are seeing in the realm of anti-Semitism and issues on college campuses. So can everyone see? Yep, perfect. So briefly, ADL, our mission is to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and secure justice and fair treatment for all individuals alike. So we are from here in the state of Florida, from Key West to Pensacola. We are fighting and pushing back against anti-Semitism and equipping Jewish students with the tools necessary to combat anti-Semitism and all forms of bigotry. So a few things that I'm going to go over in my time today with you. I'm going to talk very quickly about national and state level trends in anti-Semitic incidents. I'm going to talk about the ADL Hillel Campus Anti-Semitism Survey, which we just recently released. I'm going to talk about reasonable accommodation issues, which are extremely prevalent in our region, and some incidents and issues. So with that, I want to give you a sense of where we are in terms of anti-Semitism in the US. It's not a pretty picture. So as you can see here on this slide, we have ADL measures anti-Semitic incidents each and every year. Not every incident is necessarily a hate crime. Incidents might not necessarily be criminal. And this is not a true accounting audit because it requires, it depends on people reporting incidents to us, law enforcement, Jewish community organizations, but it does give us a good sense year in, year out of trends and areas of concern. So nationally, you can see we did have a downward trend going into 2013. In 2014, many of you may remember this spike was largely related to bomb threats that were called into Jewish community organizations throughout the country, and we've seen a significant upward spike. 2019 was the largest year on record since we'd been tracking incidents in 1979. Last year, the last year that we have reported for, we are going to be releasing the 2021 numbers in just a couple of months. But in 2020, we still had 2,024 anti-Semitic incidents in the US. This is from 2107 in 2019 to 2024 in 2020 was a 4% decrease. So a decrease is good. However, here in the state of Florida, we saw a 40% increase in reported anti-Semitic incidents, going from 91 to 127. We saw harassment incidents go from 64 to 97, including a number of these anti-Semitic harassment incidents included online anti-Semitic harassment. Vandalism went up from 24 to 30. And look, we all thought that when in the year 2020, when we were for a part of the year under lockdown, when we were indoors, working from home, studying from home in the midst of the COVID pandemic, you would think with less human interaction, there might be less anti-Semitic or any bias motivated incident. Just people don't have the human-to-human contact didn't have the human-human contact during that time period. So. But we saw the exact opposite. We saw anti-Semitic incidents rise again 40% in the state of Florida. Now, one thing I want to state at the outset, in terms of looking at college campus issues, especially here in the state of Florida, many people will look at issues or incidents taking place in New York, in Massachusetts, in California, and see the headlines and automatically assume that those trends or concerns are relevant to campuses here within our state. It's not necessarily so. Each state and each campus and really stand on their own, and it's not a formulaic approach. However, there are trends generally, concerns generally that we can look at and then talk to. So from our ADL Hillel campus survey, there were some significant findings that I want to share with you today. For when students that were polled were asked about their personal experiences of anti-Semitism, if you had any anti-Semitic experience 32% said yes, 19% offensive comments or slurs online, so 13% in person. So a little bit more online anti-Semitism than in person, given the amount of online time that students spend and experience these days. That's not necessarily surprising. Offensive comments or slurs in campus media that they've identified that it was 9%. Vandalism at 8%. Now that, even though that's a small number, that is still concerning, and physical threats and attacks at 1%. When we talk about experiences witnessing anti-Semitism, not necessarily personal or directed experience, but a witnessing of anti-Semitism, 31% said yes. So if you look at the amount of students that said that they have themselves been targeted and those that have witnessed, it's about the same number. So 18% said they've identified symbols, logos, posters, or other communications. Again, 14% here in person, offensive comments or slurs in campus media, 10%, vandalism, 9%, and again, physical threat and attack at 1%. And responses to these questions, I think these are going to be pretty insightful for our understanding of the state of anti-Semitism on college campuses. Have others assumed you hold particular views on Israel or Israeli policy because you are Jewish? 24% said yes. That can potentially lead, or that can invoke the age-old anti-Semitic trope of Jews being a fifth column, of Jews being loyal to a country other than the US primarily. Felt the need to hide your Jewish identity from others on campus, what Rochelle had mentioned at the outset. 15%, so choosing not to mention you were Jewish or abstaining from wearing visibly Jewish apparel. Been blamed for the actions of the Israeli government because you are Jewish, 12%. Felt unwelcome in a campus organization because of actual or perceived support of Israel as a Jew, 10%. Felt unwelcome in a campus organization because you are Jewish, 6%. So it is important to mention that over the past few decades, and including through last year, there has been this small but vocal group, segment of US student groups, faculty members that have espoused anti-Israel views on US campuses. The rhetoric and activity of those can, in some instances, be legitimate critiques of Israeli government policies, and it can go into and range into expressions of anti-Semitism by some activists. In a number of instances, Jewish students have reported feeling attacked, and in some cases, as Rochelle mentioned, compelled to hide their Jewish identities. So are these, one of the questions that we get frequently is this coming from the left? Is this coming from the right? The answer is, from the perception standpoint, where do Jewish students perceive that anti-Semitic issues are coming to them from? So contrary to politicized narratives that often highlight anti-Semitism as stemming only from the one end of the spectrum, anti-Semitism, there is concern among Jewish students on US college campuses about all sides simultaneously. And that is something that we are feeling in the larger Jewish community. We are seeing increases in anti-Semitic rhetoric and anti-Semitic incidents stemming from the left, from the right, everything in between, but very much so it feels like everything is coming simultaneously. So when you look at the numbers, students on US campuses reported being most concerned about anti-Semitism from those who identify as conservative or with the right at 69%, followed very closely by those who identify with the progressive as progressive or with the left at 62%. Not a significant variant there. Now, just to put this in a little bit of context, the sky is not falling. 70% of Jewish students polled said that they report feeling safe on campus as a Jew. 67% agreed that their campus was welcoming and supportive of Jewish students. For those students who had reported experiencing anti-Semitism, only 51% agreed that they felt safe, 50% agreed that their campus was welcoming and supportive. So there is a little bit of a disparity there. However, I do go back to 70% of students reporting feeling safe on campus as a Jew, and that's across the US in general. I do want to highlight a couple of incidents and issues here with, oh, sorry about that, within the state of Florida. So we have, you see here a flyer that was shared on a college campus in Central Florida. It says break debt slavery and folksfront.com. No, please do not go on to that website. Folksfront is a white supremacist group. And if we were talking 25, 30 years ago, if I were to tell you that a white supremacist group would be flyering on a college campus, you might think that the flyering on a college campus would be at a Jewish community institution, at a African-American student institution, something along those lines. It would be hate messaging. This is not that. There is this Star of David here, and this guy is kind of breaking the chains, but the goal of some groups in terms of putting propaganda out and spreading hate on college campuses increasingly over the last number of years has been to recruit on college campuses. That is a worrying trend. This was an incident up in at a campus in the northern part of the state where a anti-Israel group took a picture of students tabling, put it online, and basically trolled them for tabling in support of Israel. This was right at the outset of the pandemic. We've had up in Alachua County, a mezuzah was ripped off of a college student's off-campus housing. That happened actually in 3 instances in 2020. On the west coast of Florida, this group, Folksfront, put propaganda up in addition to the one that you see here saying Hitler is right and smash white guilt. And they put that not only on publicly visible student areas, but put it up on the office door of the campus diversity, equity, and inclusivity officer. And down in Miami-Dade County, a welcome session for Jewish students by a campus organization was disrupted by unknown participants who made anti-Semitic remarks on a Zoom meeting. Total, we received at ADL, we received 11 reports of 11 anti-Semitic incidents at college campuses in the state of Florida in 2020. I want to briefly mention reasonable accommodation because this is separate from incidents. This is one of the largest inquiries of anti-Semitism that comes to ADL year in, year out. So is a public post-secondary school required to accommodate a student's observance of the high holidays? Yes. However, it's very much incumbent on Jewish students, employees, to go and request that reasonable accommodation well in advance of needing to take time off for a high holiday, for Passover, which is coming up around the corner. One of the areas, though, that we could use all of your help with, if you have connections to college students in the state of Florida or beyond, consistent with other victims of hate crimes and bias-motivated incidents, most Jewish students who experience anti-Semitism do not report it. 75% of students who have personally experienced anti-Semitism did not report it to anyone. Only 37% reported property damage, defacement, and vandalism. Only 24% reported anti-Semitic slurs and comments online, 23% in person. That's problematic. The importance of reporting, well, when one individual is targeted by a hate crime or by a bias-motivated incident, it impacts a whole community. So reporting, some people may not want, there are barriers to reporting. There are a lot of people might have issues in admitting or that they have been victimized themselves, but we as campus organizations, as Jewish community organizations, it's difficult to address what we don't have data for. So reporting is vital. And accurate reporting sends a message that hate crimes and bias-motivated incidents are taken seriously, and those reports help increase the likelihood that members of marginalized communities can come forward to report. So a few things, and I'm going to end with this, a few things that everyone here today can do. One, call on policymakers to act now to address anti-Semitism. Professor Deborah Lipstadt, as an example, has been up before the Senate to be approved as the State Department monitor to combat anti-Semitism for quite some time now. Congressman Ted Deutsch has been an outspoken proponent. We've got a strong group of senators and representatives throughout our state who are pushing for this. We need to double down to make that happen. Second, report any hate crime, discriminatory incident, hate-based graffiti, propaganda, or problematic event in your community, adl.org/report incident, or if you have students on campus, have them report it to the administration and to Hillel. Make sure both of those, or both the administration and Hillel, get the reports of any incident or issue. You can report issues online. If you or your students experience any anti-Semitism or bigotry on social media, on gaming platforms, ADL has a cyber safety action guide which links to social media companies, which links to gaming platforms. Share vetted resources and insights to inform critical conversations. Many of us on email or on social media, we can very quickly hit the like button. We can very quickly hit the share button, the forward button on our emails. Make sure if you have any question or concern between ADL, Hillel, the JCRC, and the Jewish Federation, you have organizations in place that can give you verified, solid, contextual information about what is transpiring on college campuses. So please connect with us if you have any questions or concerns. And last, join the effort. It's up to all of us to get off the couch, to get off the bench and play this game and get involved. If you're not yet involved with the Federation, with ADL, with Hillel, now is a great time and we can use your support. So with that, I'm gonna stop my share and I will turn it back over to Evan.
Why don't we turn it over to Adam?
And I will pick it up. Thanks so much, Lonnie, and everyone for being here and for taking interest in this very important topic. So I am live on the campus of Nova Southeastern in Davie, where I've got a team doing quite an interesting activity that's very pertinent to today's topic. So I hope that we'll have a chance to go live as we speak into the University Center of the university where they are now. But first, I want to ask us to sit with two different realities of what's going on campuses across the country, as well as here locally. So I'm the local director for Broward and Palm Beach counties. We focus at Florida Atlantic and also here at Nova Southeastern, where we have a beautiful facility next door to the office where I'm sitting now. And we work with both graduate students and an increasingly strong undergraduate student population as NSU continues to really grow. And that's what I've heard that is happening next year as well. So those two confusing realities. It is confusing to be a young Jewish adult on a college campus right now. I want to ask you to imagine yourself in their shoes. Most likely, you do not have a strong knowledge base about Israel or your Jewish traditions. If you went to day school or were active in a Jewish youth movement or a summer camp, you're in the minority, a very strong one, but a minority nonetheless. In Israel, well, Israel's got a lot of different layers. It's a complex subject. For your entire life until very recently, you've only known one prime minister and his policies. And you've only known an Israel whose military and economic prowess are world class. And that's if you're even paying attention. And for some reason, the social issues that you do identify with seem to be aligning with the Palestinian solidarity movement. So when a war flares up in Gaza, you're probably aware that Hamas isn't doing the Gazan citizens any favors, but your news feed, Instagram, is covered with anti-Semitic, anti-Israel rhetoric. This is a confusing predicament. It's one that requires more than one free trip to Israel, which isn't always easy to sell, by the way, and Israel upping their hasbara or their advocacy game. You might avert your eyes when you walk past the Hillel table. You might think you've got enough on your plate. Do I need this too? The other reality is that it is an awesome time to be a Jewish student on so many campuses across this country. If you connect, if you choose a campus with a vibrant and well-funded Jewish organization, your connection to community and to Israel will absolutely grow. You will build your own relationship to Israel, even if it's different than your grandfather. You will learn that criticism of a democratically elected government, it's okay. But you're also going to learn that anti-Semitic tropes that have been around for 2,000 or more years still plague us and you. And they can absolutely be disguised as anti-Israel rhetoric on campus. Your pride in being Jewish will soar. And you're going to be around others who also are learning that the power of community is something worth being a part of. If needed, you might learn to go out and fight for the values of your community. But you're going to do it not because others want you to do it, but because you have built your own powerful relationship and you connect to something meaningful. Guess what? You're also going to find that it's fun, it's rewarding, and it helps you address your sincerely high level of anxiety. So the world is scary. It's uncertain. Anti-Semites have absolutely found oxygen. Lonnie's report certainly showed you that that's true on campuses across this country and locally. But it's okay. Your community can help you, and things are also pretty great. So what is it that Hillel of Broward and Palm Beach does to help address these challenges and these issues? So I can't quite see on my screen. I hope that some of my team members will slowly be joining us. One of the things that we certainly do are we teach cohort learning programs, some of them that focus on different aspects of Israel. So we pull in students, groups of 10, 15 at a time. We build their own social network, something that not only because of COVID, but absolutely even more so because of COVID is needed right now. And we give them a chance to grapple with important information and actually learn what's going on. We give them a chance to use their own perspective. We have a lot of on-campus events, like the one going on right now at Nova Southeastern. So I'll ask if they're in and ready to go. First of all, I see Sharon Brantwine. She has my name on her screen, but Sharon, why don't you unmute and tell us what's going on out there? Can you hear us? What she wants me to share. That is in the University Center at Nova Southeastern, where a group of students are tabling for an important program called Spread Cream Cheese, Not Hate. They're actually going around the entire campus trying to engage with all kinds of students and faculty members first of all, introducing them to what anti-Semitism is. Anti-Semitism, there are 50% of Americans that don't even know what it is. That's actually true on our college campuses as well. Not because they don't want to know, they just don't. So part of it is educating folks about what anti-Semitism is. And the other part is asking them to sign a petition, to sign a pledge that they will combat, together with Hillel, anti-Semitism and hate in all of its forms. So it's just a way that we're raising the education and engaging with students on campuses across the country. Perfect timing. I'm going to invite onto the screen, who's a lot taller than I am, but this is NSU's Hillel co-president, Micah Gozi. Micah Gozi is a Weston boy, currently serving in leadership here at NSU. He just ran over so he could talk to you a little bit from the event. But Mike, share a little bit about Hillel at NSU and what it's like to be a Jewish student on campus in an area where not everybody's always comfortable with it.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you, Adam. Thank you, everyone, for hearing me speak today. Like Adam mentioned, one of the efforts of our Hillel is to fight anti-Semitism, and that's both explicitly and implicitly. I'm a pre-health major, so I'm going to use the doctor analogy here. The symptom of anti-Semitism is fear, but the root cause is just a lack of understanding. And so implicitly, we try and engage in a ton of multicultural events with the Palestinian group or a Muslim group on campus, just to get involved, break down some barriers, alleviate some of the fears involved in engaging with a variety of different cultures. And then now, like Adam said, explicitly, we're hosting an event in the University Center, Spread Cream Cheese, Not Hate. And that's targeted more towards the lack of understanding that some students or some people may have. So students come up, we offer them a bagel, they sign that first we educate them a little bit about what anti-Semitism is, what the experience is like for us as students and us as a community. And then they sign to commit to fighting and identifying anti-Semitism when they see it. And so the combination of both targeting the symptom and the root cause is definitely interactive tactic that we use, and it's helped a lot. So since I've been here for 2 years, almost 2 years, and this is a very effective and efficient way of going about teaching our community about who we are, what we stand for, and sharing a little bit about what it's like for us.
So I know that we were going to do questions at the end. I won't ask us to come out of turn, but Mike is going to want to go back out and be a part of the program. So if Rochelle, you allow, maybe we'll let Mike answer a question or two.
So Mike, if I may, let me get my, Arnie Samlin here from Federation. Thank you for joining us. One of the questions that actually came in was, what could we as a community be doing better? I'm going to kind of skip over the anti-Semitism part because that's not our core theme today, although it's obviously overlapping with the anti-Israel theme. But what could we be doing better to prepare young people for college life and for the confusing communications and even the anti-Israel rhetoric that they're going to face on campus?
That's a great question, Rabbi Arnie. For me, the way I see it is it's all about community and education. I didn't necessarily grow up in the most Jewish-oriented lifestyle, but upon coming into college and reconnecting with my Jewish roots and learning what it is to be Jewish and learning what it is to be pro-Israel, both the controversial aspects of it and the proud aspects of the country, it's definitely helped me understand who I am as an individual. And I've had tons of conversations since being involved in Hillel and being involved in our Jewish Learning Fellowship, stuff like that. But as far as for students before they arrive to college campuses, there has to be more involvement in these kinds of rhetorics. So one amazing idea would be to connect high school students with college students and do some kind of events together, or we have a bunch of speakers that come in to speak to us. I didn't have the luxury of hearing from these individuals before I was 18, 19 years old because I wasn't necessarily involved in this community. Hillel does a great job networking and identifying Jewish students and getting them involved, but it's not as easy when students are kind of spread out all these different high schools that may not be a Jewish day school or have programming for Jewish students. So I guess more programming and more networking, more dialogue it's really just about education at the end of the day. And if we are all educated, that's the strongest thing to lean back on. So.
Right.
Shall we cut them loose?
Yeah, thank you, Mike.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be able to speak to each of you. And I'm grateful that we have a panel of such wonderful individuals fighting for spreading education about who the Jewish community is and what we stand for. So thank you so much.
Well, look, Mike, I'm Evan Goldman from Jewish Federation of Broward County, and it filled us with such pride that you're holding it down at NSU, but even more so that you are a native son of Broward County. Thank you. Thank you for representing us on campus each and every day. Keep doing what you're doing. I am happy to be here to discuss an issue that perhaps I'm most passionate about than any other issue I discuss, and that is the progressive case for Israel. Look, I'm new to Jewish communal work, having spent 30 years in government and nonprofit leadership, working on behalf of some of the most marginalized populations in our community. And doing so has strengthened my support for Israel, not distanced it. But first, I want to articulate why, when discussing the anti-Israel movement on campuses, it's important to describe the progressive case. It's because according to a University of Chicago study last year, 50% of college students self-identify as liberal, and that stands in contrast to the general population, of which just 28% do. In some places like New England, where many young people from South Florida attend college, 71% identify as liberal. So what does that mean for those of us who love Israel? Will the next generation of Jewish Americans have her back? The answer to my mind is unequivocally yes. I think any discussion of the anti-Israel movement on campus must begin with the so-called BDS movement, boycott, divestment, sanctions. Look, Jewish teachings embrace legitimate protests and responsible dissent. The B, the D, and the S have long been part of the Jewish communal toolbox. They help power the civil rights movement. They forever changed the lives of Jews in the Soviet Union. They helped topple a real apartheid regime in South Africa, and it even led to the creation of the State of Israel. But BDS, as it exists today, is nothing more than thinly veiled anti-Semitism, nothing more, nothing less. Ted Deutsch, who is a friend of many on this call, his wife Jill is with us, and she works with Adam. Hi, Jill. Explains it, to my mind, better than anybody. He said, it's not the B, it's not the D, it's not the S that concerns us. It's that movement seeks the destruction of Israel from the river to the sea. In fact, Omar Barghouti, a BDS co-founder, said, and I'm going to read this, quote, good riddance, the two-state solution for the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is finally dead, but someone has to give an official death certificate before the rotting corpse is given a proper burial. And we can all move on and explore the most just, moral, and enduring alternative for peaceful coexistence in Jews and Arabs and mandate Palestine the one-state solution. Look, unequivocally, the goal of BDS is not an economic one. Its ultimate goal, as Omar and so many others will tell you, is to ensure that Israel ceases to exist and deny the Jewish people a state and a homeland. Can BDS supporters like Jewish Voices for Peace be counted on to champion the safety of children and families in the Middle East? The answer is no. Look at Congress recently voted to for Iron Dome funding, and I don't have to tell this audience how many lives, both Arab and Israeli, Iron Dome saves. Jewish Voices for Peace and those who support BDS came out against it. Fortunately, Congress voted 42-9 to support Iron Dome. And the majority included members from both the House Freedom Caucus, which is conservative, and the Progressive Caucus, which is liberal. And I like to share that with you because it describes how, despite an increasingly divisive political divide, support for Israel remains nonpartisan, as it should be. There is a member of Congress who represents the poorest district in America. His name is Richie Torres. His progressive credentials are beyond reproach, and he is one of Israel's strongest defenders. And significantly, and I raise this because it is important, he is also gay. He recently said, "I remember meeting an activist with a shirt that said Queers for Palestine. I remember telling the activist, does the opposite exist? Are there Palestinians for queers?" It was partly a joke, but partly a serious observation. I found it utterly baffling that you had LGBTQ activists doing the bidding of Hamas, which is a terrorist organization that executes LGBTQ people. And then I came to realize that the reason is intersectionality. And the BDS movement uses intersectionality to penetrate a whole host of self-proclaimed progressive movements. And you know, Adam knows this, Mike knows this. Intersectionality is worthy of discussion on college campuses, and in my opinion, all spaces. It recognizes that our identities do not exist independently of each other. I am more than just one identity. I'm more than just a Jewish American. I'm a Zionist. I'm a person with a disability. I was born profoundly deaf. I'm a husband. I'm a dad. And all of these things make us who we are. And we need to communicate that, our Jewish identity, to others. And Hillel and ADL are doing the right thing because they're talking about what it means to be a Jew and why Israel matters to the Jews. What happened to the Jews when they were stateless? Does this sound like something that resonates, whether you're a red, blue, and the purple? Of course it does, because these are important values, values that do tie to Israel. We need to remind people that we are from this land, and it is not fake news, it's real. It demonstrates, the land of Israel demonstrates Jewish values. It is pluralistic, it is democratic. These are things today more than ever young people are seeking, because they see a world around them that is not the one they were born into. We all are seeing this, but it is felt more acutely by our children. So in conclusion, I think we don't need everyone on college campuses to support Israel or the government or their policies any more than we would expect that to happen with the United States. But what we need them to support the fundamental right and need for Jewish national self-determination in the state of Israel when engaged. And we've seen it with Mike. When engaged, college students will see that in accordance with their values and their traditions. And I thank you for letting me share some of my insight on young people and the case for Israel. Rabbi?
Thank you so much, Evan. I'm Arnie Samlin. I'm the Chief Jewish Education Officer here at Jewish Federation. It's a pleasure to be the cleanup person today. And just one or two quick questions. And the first thing that I actually would like to ask, and this can either go to our friends from Hillel or our friends from JCRC, we can really go to any of them. I'm going to tell a quick story. Adam, you and I crossed paths one time, I believe it was on the streets of Jerusalem, and you were leading this amazing interfaith group of students through Israel. And clearly it was one of the things that you were doing to be able to build partnerships and collaboration. So what I'd like to do is ask again of any number of you, but particularly Adam, who are the natural partners in terms of building coalitions to again oppose the out and out anti-Israel agenda that some have? Who are our natural collaborators?
So it's a great question, Rabbi Samlin, and I think that we have to identify on all of our campuses that we work the student leaders that are the most influential, and that depends on which campus, and it also changes from year to year. In some cases, it's the Greek students, and if you're engaging with the right fraternities and sororities, that also probably has influence within the student government and things like that. You know, Nova Southeastern is an enormous science-based school where students are interested in free health studies. Very different than a Florida Atlantic, where you've got one of the most diverse state schools in the state of Florida, and it's very important to build connections with the Black Student Union and the Asian Student Union and aspects like that. So I don't know that you can say, you know, one blanket group are the most strategic. It's really depends on the campus, depends to some extent on the year, or at least let's say the few year stretch. But leaders are leaders no matter what. You've got to identify influencers.
Great. Anyone else want to jump in on that in terms of bridge building and collaborations with other groups?
I'll just jump in real quick. Just that's something that our campus and community organizations do regularly. But you know, to go to one of the earlier points, that's something that we need to inculcate very much so in students leading up to something that Mike shared, that you know, it's really during the high school experience where some of those leadership traits can be inculcated. And look, we've got, in terms of anti-Israel issues on college campuses, we are seeing significant hurdles in the state of Florida. We have two campuses, Florida State University and University of South Florida, where student government issues have presented frequently. And luckily, the administrations in those two campuses have pushed back. But as Adam just mentioned, every few years, there's another group of students. So there are campuses now that are very amenable, where we could have issues years from now. The way to really make our Florida campus culture a powerful pro-Israel be engaged in a pro-Israel environment is to make sure that that is a long-term strategy, not a tactic or not a knee-jerk response whenever there's a issue on any single campus.
I want to respond, first of all, thank you, Lonnie, and you're right. I want to respond specifically to Rabbi's question about, engaging people that may not live, work, and play like us. If we are going to be successful in making the case for Israel, we need to be uncomfortable. There are a lot of ways to show our support. One of them is to rally in communities where we feel comfortable, whether they be Hallandale or Hollywood, or any Jewish community. But it's quite another thing to talk to those who don't agree with us and find out what we have in common. I want to share an anecdote. It involves a young man who was running for the State House of Representatives. He called and said, "I want to meet with you, Evan, in a discreet place." I said, "Sure." And this is a young man of color. He said, "Well, I want to get my head around the Israel thing." I said, "Okay. May I ask you a couple questions?" I said, "Sure." First thing I said is that, do you believe in Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state? "Yeah, I do." "Well, do you believe that Israel has a right to defend herself like any sovereign nation? Oh, yeah, I do." Final question was, "Well, do you believe in a two-state solution?" "Oh, yeah, I do." "Well, you just described what many people in the Jewish community feel. Congratulations." He didn't conceptualize it. We need to focus on a commonality rather than what divides us. And there's plenty of time for bright lines in debate. Israel, in terms of dialogue, most often we need to encroach on those bright lines and talk with our neighbors.
Okay, so we are just about out of time, and I want to just mention a few things here. First of all, our thanks to ADL, to Hillel, our dear and beloved partners in this work, not only the work of this webinar, but each and every day. We value their partnership and the wonderful relationship that we at both at Federation in general and JCRC in particular have with them. Special note regarding Hillel, and we are particularly proud to be one of the sponsoring organizations of Hillel. And Jill did put out there in the chat that there's going to be a wonderful event coming up shortly to benefit them and to honor our friend Karen Zemmel, who's on this call. And we look forward to joining you there. I want to do a quick kind of reality check to the work that we do at Jewish Federation. And it's not to be a plug, it's to say when we talk about our partnering agencies, we are very fortunate to have an exceptional group of organizations that we work with, not simply funding them, but really working in true partnership with them to do the kind of work that we've been talking about and that Mike highlighted earlier, to really inspire young people and others to become friends of Israel. Not necessarily that you agree with every single policy. We don't have to agree with every single policy of any organization or country, but to really build that ongoing relationship with Israel that enables us to have the powerful conversations. Hillel, we mentioned, a Wider Bridge, our partner in engaging the LGBTQ community with Israel, Maccabi Tzair, which deals with connecting the Latin teen community with Israel, March of the Living, which brings a whole message, a pro-Israel message via Holocaust knowledge, as well as an Israel experience. Youth organizations like BBYO and NCSY, a core portion of which is connecting teens to Israel. We have a wonderful group of Reform Temples that does exactly what Mike was talking about, takes Jewish teens on a campus caravan to really see what college life is like, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and to really, again, prepare them for what do they need to know to become active members of the Jewish campus community and the pro-Israel campus community. Open Door Media, which has become our partners in communicating via video and other very important resources that we communicate regularly to the Jewish education community here. The fact that we fund high school experiences in Israel, because one of the best ways to learn about Israel before going off to campus life is to actually experience Israel firsthand. For those, in addition to which we do summer camp experiences, all of which have Israel as a core part of their program. So we really are always looking for new partners and new ways of engaging people with Israel and including young people. I should mention the work we do in our partnership. Our colleague Elian Dambe, who heads our work in engaging the community with Israel, including our partner community of Nesher in Israel. These are all person-to-person ways of engaging. I've put out in the chat something that we did actually in collaboration with all of the organizations that are part of this and then some. We created a back-to-school campus resource guide, which now lives as our Israel toolkit, so that we have access, and every member of our community, both young people and old, have access to balanced information about Israel. It's very definitely not preachy. It's just the facts, ma'am. And it's really meant, again, to be a resource. We hope you'll pass it along to others as well. Again, our thanks to all of the panelists today, and our thanks to each and every one of you for participating. And we just wish you all the best, and please stay tuned for more exciting offerings and to become part of this greater Jewish and Israel conversation. Everyone be well. Take care. Shalom.